Now we're in Chapter 10, Section 2, and we're going to discuss kind of the Electoral College in this one. Many elections are a two-part process. There's a primary and a general election. In election, numerous different races can be taking place on the same ballot. For all races except the presidential election, the winner is based on the popular vote. So let me break this down a little bit. Many elections have multiple parts. A primary is an election to establish who the official candidates are going to be. And they don't always do these, but a lot of times they do. When it says numerous races are taking place, you may be voting for president and members of the House of Representatives, and you may be voting for local people, the circuit clerk, and different things like that. So you may be voting on local elections, state elections, and federal elections all on the same ballot. The presidential election goes by the electoral system, which we'll talk about in a minute. The popular vote is the most votes wins. So someone gets 500 votes, the other person gets 300, the 500 vote person wins. Initiative is a way citizens can propose new laws or state constitutional amendments. And we talked about that, the creation of laws and amendments in Chapter 6. A proposition is a proposed law, and a referendum is a way citizens can approve or reject state or local law. If you get a referendum to go through, you can have an impact on local or state law. Sometimes special elections are held, such as a recall vote. Citizens can vote to remove a public official from office. They can do this if somebody goes against. I say against their views. You can be like, I don't like so-and-so, so I'm recalling them. Usually, you got to get enough public support to get something done. So it's got to be a lot of people think something's wrong. So if you can get a lot of community support that somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing, then you can get a recall vote. The presidential elections happen in 3 stages: the nomination of the candidate, the campaign, and the vote. So let's talk about this. Nomination is where presidential hopefuls start campaigning for their party's nomination a year or so before the election. Usually, like in the 2020 election, late 2018, early 2019, if you're not in full swing by 2019, you're already going to lose. That's kind of the idea. And so, usually a year or so before the elections when they start the campaign process. In the summer of the election year, the major political parties hold a convention to choose their candidate. Now, of course, they didn't in 2020 because of COVID. They had like virtual conventions where they did Zoom type meetings and stuff like that. But for the most part, they usually have a big convention where they go to this big convention hall and they have speeches and bands and people singing, all kinds of stuff. Sometimes these conventions were dramatic as people would openly debate and campaign on the convention floor. But that really, nowadays, they usually have an idea who's going to be the candidate. Now, in 2016, there was still some debate between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders had a lot of support, and they kind of used the convention as a way of Bernie Sanders said, okay, I'm cool with Hillary being the nominee. They would hold state-by-state roll call votes if any candidate had received enough votes to win the nomination. In recent years, that's lost its purpose because the candidates really chosen a lot of times before the primaries or during the primaries when they're chosen. So by the point of the convention, they usually know. The parties use the convention to kick off the campaign and rally party members. It's really a support way of kicking the campaign off because at that point, primaries are over and things like that, and they can just kind of focus on that person's election. Presidential campaigns are in full swing by September. Candidates travel around the country. They hold press conferences. They take part in debates. Donald Trump did rallies and stuff like that. They meet with local and state leaders. They try to win support of people in cities, especially they go to states where they're weak to try and win support there. But if it's a state they know they're probably not going to win, they're probably not going to spend much time there. The Electoral College is an indirect method to elect the president. And we went over all this before. It's just kind of a refresher. Electors are people who elect the president, And a winner-take-all system is when one candidate wins the electoral votes from the entire state. The Electoral College is the electoral map that we go by. You got to have 270 electoral votes in order to win. Each state gets a certain amount of electoral votes. By this point, you should know this. Electors are just the people that are picked to elect the president. In the winner-take-all system, that's where Alabama has that. If someone wins the majority of our votes, they win all of them. The winning electors meet in December at the state capitol to cast their vote for president. And so because of this, they meet up in order to basically make it official. With the total number of electoral votes being 538, the winning candidate has to win 270 of these in order to win the election. The Electoral College is as old as the U.S. Constitution. It's how we've always done it. Critics argue that states like California have too much power because they have so many electoral votes. They're also being criticized the system because you can lose the popular vote and still win the election, as Donald Trump did in 2016. It also makes it very hard for a third-party candidate to win in a winner-take-all state because you're not going to be able to pick up one or two electoral votes here and there. And that brings us to the end of Section 2. We will continue with Section 3.